Welcome to Pregnancy, Birth and Beyond. I'm Alecia with a special news bulletin for our Australian listeners today. It's Tuesday, the 30th of March. I'm speaking with Alecia Steines, director of one of our largest maternity consumer advocacy organisations, Maternity Consumer Network. She is also the host and creator of the podcast Birth, the Forgotten Feminist Issue. Definitely go ahead and check that out. It's an excellent podcast. Alecia is also a hypnobirthing teacher and mother of 5. We caught up last night after one of Alecia's classes to discuss our upcoming federal elections here in Australia and how we can use the opportunities a federal election poses to improve maternity healthcare services. Some of you might already know that apart from my important work here at Pregnancy, Birth and Beyond, I am also the National President of Maternity Choices Australia, our longest standing consumer advocacy organisation. And this is the first time that I have had the pleasure of interviewing Alecia after many years of crossing paths through our work. So join us for a fast-paced and illuminating discussion on how you can participate in improving maternity healthcare services in your area and why it's so important that you do. Share this interview with friends and family, write to your local MP and keep us posted about your progress. All the details are in the show notes below and also on our website at pbbmedia.org. You can also contact Alecia through maternitykonsumernetwork.org.au. If you have any questions about this interview, you can drop us a line through hello@pbbmedia.org and to Alecia, management@maternitykonsumernetwork.org.au. This podcast was recorded on Gadigal clan lands, an area encompassing the Centennial, Queens and Moore Parklands. I pay my respects to elders past, present and those emerging, and deeply acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land whose cultures and customs have nurtured and continue to nurture this land and waters for over 60,000 years, and upon which we now work and live. I recognise that sovereignty of the pre-colonial peoples of these lands was never ceded, and that recognition of cultures, connection to land and waters, and the sovereignty of all Indigenous peoples across Australia is a matter of current and vital importance. Hello, welcome Alecia. Thank you for joining us on the Pregnancy, Birth and Beyond show. I'm so excited you're here.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. I know I'm catching you, it's evening in Queensland. It's 7:45 p.m. and we're in New South Wales. It's 9:15. So thank you for joining us so late. So let's jump straight into it. So what are some of the core issues women and communities are currently facing here in Australia when it comes to maternity health care?
Yeah, okay. So women can't access the type of care that they want, which is continuing midwifery carer, and we know that from every state and national review. We had the new, back in 2019, it was released, the strategic directions for Australian maternity services. Whilst it wasn't reflected well in the document, we know by the submissions, and that was open to every woman. It wasn't just our membership through Maternity Consumer Network, that we know that that's what women want. We also have a system of maternity care that's, if we look at the Lancet, one of their journal articles was pointing to too much too soon and too little too late. So we've got over-intervention. Basically, we've got care that's not individualised. Like we've got a rising caesarean rate, rising induction rate, rising trauma rates, yet we're not actually improving outcomes. We've got huge unwarranted variances. We've got women saying that they can't get enough continuing midwifery care, but they also are saying that they have no idea what their options are for maternity care or how to make informed choices in that option of care, because we have no publicly available data on care providers. I mean, some MGPs and some private midwives publish their own data on Facebook, but women still have to need to know where to go to find that. So we've got huge gaps, basically a system that is designed for the system and not for women.
Okay, so there is an election coming up, and I know one of the most important things that people can do and the best ways that they can actually achieve change in this area is to actually engage with healthcare services and engage with their local MP and engage with health in their state and tell them what they want. what's important to them. And there's such a thing called the election promises that different parties will make in the lead up to the election if they start hearing enough from the community about the same issue again and again and again. So it's an excellent time for consumers, which is people accessing healthcare services, right? For women and families across the country to start connecting with health. Can you let us know a little bit about that, and what are some of the election promises that we'd be really wanting to highlight?
Yeah, so I know women are busy, I know that, but MPs can't really represent their constituents well if we're not going forward and emailing them or requesting meetings or whatever it is to actually put our voice forward in what we need. So yes, it will be a federal election year. We've started to see actually some parties starting to roll out policy already. So it's important that we get in early, because the closer the election gets, the more individuals and organisations that start requesting things. So I guess if we looking, I mean, there are independents. I'll just talk to the three when I say major parties, like the parties that, have a number of seats. So if we look at LNP federally, they're talking about it in the party room, but we've actually not really seen a lot of progress there. So definitely, I mean, they're in government now. ALP, they don't even, as far as I'm aware, have a decent maternity policy. They were very much medical lobbying. It's kind of taken over for a long time, so we're having a hard time getting in there. The Greens, we've actually got a pretty good segue in there. So I think they'll be okay. So what we need women to do is actually be targeting the LNP and ALP. So like Liberal National Party and Australian Labor Party, which is like the blue and then the red. It doesn't necessarily even have to be current MPs in Parliament. There will be candidates, and I think it will be a tight election year given the stuff that's going on in Parliament at the moment. And we already know that there were some very marginal seats from last time. So really important that women. I mean, let's get grandmas and partners and husbands and whoever else involved, because like it's hard carting children to MP meetings and things like that. So did you want me to talk about as well what we're asking for?
Yeah, what from your perspective is currently one of the head, you're sitting at the head of one of our largest and most important maternity advocacy organizations. So, and you've been in advocacy for many, many years. What are you seeing after many years of work, after speaking with all the key people, after discussing the issues with thousands of women? What do you feel for this election are the most important issues to push and ask for change in? Yeah,
so I think importantly for people to realise too is often the federal government likes to palm maternity reform to the states, but that is a total lie. It's total bullshit, because they actually fund a big portion of maternity care that gets delivered through the states. They fund also maternity care through Medicare and through private health insurance. So we need to definitely be targeting the federal government. And the number one thing I think we need to be asking for is funding reform. $7 billion gets chucked into maternity services a year. On top of that, about women top up that with at least that much as well. We know, we can't say it's got good outcomes. We know that New Zealand does it, but back in 2017, the Independent Hospital Pricing Authority looked at bundled funding. So it's where each trimester has a certain amount of money, and that includes the fourth trimester or that postnatal period, because currently the funding is activity-based. So the more done to that woman and baby, including separating the mother and baby, it's actually incentivised. We know that more intervention is incentivised. Yet if we break it down into trimesters and birth and redistribute the funding, we have what should lead like better innovation. It reduces the incentive to over-service. It reduces the incentive to separate women and babies. We also then should get better postnatal care, because it's like the poor cousin. I mean, it's funded so poorly that often women, they don't get any postnatal care after birth, and it's so critical. So we hope that that's going to save money, so taxpayer money. It actually allows women, so this bundled funding would be allocated to the woman, much like like an NDIS, you know, like here's your bucket of money and then you allocate it to a care provider. So that actually what it should drive to is allow women to make more informed decisions, because at the moment, often the first point of call is the GP. The GP's like to have private health insurance, go to private obstetrician, otherwise go to the public system. It's never the discussion about what do you want for birth, here's all the models of care, what might work best for the individual woman. So I guess it's multifaceted why we see bundled funding and funding reform is so critical. We also have a situation at the moment, the states are actually pushing women back out into the community to GPs. So it's not saving money. We've seen intervention rise. So the state hospitals are still getting their money, but now they're trying to save money and actually like cost shift back to the community to GP. So women are receiving even more fragmented care within the state hospital system because the intervention's rising, so it's costing more money, yet they've only got a certain bucket of money, finite, amount of resources. So now they're trying to push women back to GPs. So we're never going to see improved outcomes until we start getting some accountability for that money and shifting away from activity-based funding. The second thing women want is more continuity with midwifery carer. The federal government can make the states more responsible for the money they're giving them, so we can have more midwifery group practices. I know depending on which state you're in, they're called different things, but basically you're having an own midwife or a small team of midwives. The federal government also offers that through Medicare. So currently though, Medicare and for private midwives, it's really for white middle class women. We know that Aboriginal women and babies benefit hugely from it. We've seen a 50% reduction in preterm births when we've got Medicare funded midwives working for ACCHO, so the Aboriginal Community Controlled Health Organisations. We know that far less intervention, higher birth satisfaction, so we're reducing trauma, so short and long-term benefits are there. But we need to see higher rebates, because the current rebates, we can't expect private midwives to work for nothing, but we also can't keep up with the inequities that we have in the current system. The third thing we need is transparency in data. Like, we've got data that's 2 years old, so clinicians actually can't be reflecting on their practice because it's 2 years old. We've got consumers that can't make informed choices because the data's 2 years old, but also very hard to understand. It's often not even down to maternity services, so down to like a certain model of care or a certain place of birth. It's all kind of jumbled in together, and it's through a report. Like, really, a woman should be able to click on that hospital, something pops up, so it's really easy to understand, because about 70% of people have low health literacy. But you can see intervention, birth satisfaction, which we don't capture either, which would be part of that. Like, how can we have a system that medical lobbying would insist that is safe for women, but we never ask women what the care was like that she received, and that what her emotional well-being and mental health was like? Because physical outcomes are great, but we can do both. Like being alive should be a bare minimum, and that's never captured as well. So that should be a priority of the government, because we know when it's happened in other parts of the world that it's hugely improved practice. The cost has gone down because we've got clinicians that are reflecting. The women would start leading the maternity system as well, because they're going to go to those places of birth. I'm talking more metro areas here too, because I know in rural areas it's very, very difficult, because there mightn't be any place to birth, or you've got to drive 3 hours, or perhaps, there's only one place. Some of that, just quickly jumping back, if we had a more even distribution of funds, we would see more rural centres being sustainable too, because some of those women who go there for antenatal or postnatal care but don't birth there, that service is not getting funded for it. So if we chopped up the funding and say a woman had, 10 months seeing the local rural maternity unit, but she might have had twins, so, we don't birth twins here, you've got to go away, that went back there for the postnatal care, they would get funded, whereas they're not now. So it's a lot harder for these rural centres who offer really good antenatal and postnatal care, don't offer every type of birth care, that they're not getting funded because these women are going, forced out to go to birth in metro centres. So 3 big things. I don't think that we should scrimp on that. Like, they are big asks, but these are things that have consistently come up. The bundled funding from IPA, from the maternity, the strategic direction for maternity services. We also had it raised in the Medicare review for private midwifery items. We've seen it in other parts of the world. Health economists have continually said that this is not sustainable. Like, it's not just $7 billion. There's also, because of the over-intervention, a huge amount of cost because of the mistakes and, you know, the readmissions and things like that as well. So,
and also the postnatal and anxiety, depression and anxiety cost us billions of dollars, which some of that can be corrected through continuity of care. A lot of that can be corrected through continuity. It can be picked up early. It can be completely avoided. It could be supported much better and therefore not leading to further need for more services later on. And that goes not just for the mother, but also for the child and the partner and blah, 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 all these on-flowing costs that we never really see. Some of them we see accurately and others we just don't capture. So we're not looking in that area.
Yeah, the longer term outcomes, absolutely.
Okay, so let's recap. Reading from the 2021 Federal MP brief prepared by Maternity Consumer Network, we know that the current maternity care spending by government is approximately $7 billion per year. The current birth rate is around 300,000 births per year. Despite this, our outcomes are relatively poor. A third of women have birth trauma, 2/3 of which is due to disrespectful treatment. Only 8% of women can access continuity of midwifery carer, which is known to be one of the best types of maternity health care. Caesarean section rates are at 36%, which is more than double the recommended rate by the World Health Organization. 43% of low-risk women have their labours induced. Many are reporting not having informed consent. There is an 11-fold variance in 3rd and 4th degree tears across services in the country. Preterm birth rates of Aboriginal babies is between 2 and 7 times that of non-Indigenous babies. So the solutions that are being suggested, the 3 key and easy to understand solutions are the following. 1. Increase continuity of midwifery carer. 2. Bundle the funding as suggested by the IHPA in 2017, the National Strategy in 2019, and the MBS Review of Participating Midwives report in 2019. 3. Published data on hospital and clinician outcomes, including patient-reported experience measures and patient-reported outcome measures. So we want to know what the data is per clinician and per hospital. What are their intervention rates and what are women and people accessing maternity healthcare services actually experiencing on the ground? There's an election coming up. It's really important for Australian women, their families, the parents, the uncles, the aunties, everyone, friends, family, anyone who is a support person for young families to get in touch with their local MPs and the candidates in their states and start asking for either a meeting or send them an email about the things that are important to them when it comes to improving maternity healthcare services. Is there anything else that women need to know, or families or community need to know in terms of how do they find out? A lot of people don't even know who their local MP is. How do you find that out?
So there's a lower house in the federal government, plus we've got a Senate. So senators will represent the state. It's worthwhile contacting them as well. And then you'll have in your lower house, it's not even your town, so it can be a little bit hard to find out if you're not into politics. So for instance, I live in Noosa, and when I moved here, I wasn't even sure what my electorate was called. So I actually had to Google search Noosa electorate, and it was actually Wide Bay. So then, I go to Wide Bay and federal MP, and then, found my local MP. What I usually do is actually have a little bit of a background, find out where they're from and things like that, because I like to build relationships first, because once you have that relationship, they'll tend to do anything you want within reason. So my first meeting, I actually said, I don't encourage people to do this, but I just said to him, do you know who I am? And from there, he's like, no. But I knew that he had kids young. He was expecting a grandchild. So we talked about maternity care, and, I just kind of gave him a bit of an overview to start with before I started asking stuff. And now I can send him his assistant stuff without even meeting him, and he'll just follow it up because I've got that relationship. He trusts that the information I'm giving him is accurate and that what I'm asking him to do is beneficial. So find your electorate. You can even, if you know who your electorate, where your electorate is, you can go onto the current federal parliament website and find them. That's only sitting elected members. So if, for instance, if I wanted to go see because I've got he used to be National Senator, but anyway, I'll just call him LNP because he still sits in that party room. But what I'll do as well, coming up to the election, I'll see the Greens candidate. And so I'll just Google like Wide Bay Greens, probably on Facebook because they usually have a Facebook page, and then I'll find out where they're going to be. And I'll do the same for ALP. We've actually got a brief on the Maternity Consumer Network page under campaigns as well. So for women listening or whoever is listening, you don't have to be madly typing frantically. You know, we've got it and we've got all the evidence there. It's just A4 page. We've made it really simple because what I find is if we make it too cumbersome, MPs don't understand, but also they could be seeing 15 different briefs a day. So we want to keep it really easy for you and the MP so they can just have a quick glance over it and see what needs to be done. You may need to follow up, but whether it's email, definitely email. I would put in your email as well when you attach that brief, and do a little bit of an email before you just attach the brief so they don't think it's just like a standard form letter. But also, if you've got the confidence, and I'm happy for you to text or call me beforehand if you need a bit of a pep talk, but if you've got the confidence, request a meeting as well. Make sure that within your email, I'd also put that we know that maternity care is a federal government issue, because often women will hear straight back, you need to talk to such and such a state MP. You know, so we just get this kind of like vicious cycle where we're going round and round. But we actually, if we go to where the bulk of the bucket of money is coming from, it's the federal government. So we really need to be in there. And ideally, you know, like within the next 6 weeks, it would be good to have a huge amount of women seeing MPs and candidates to actually get them talking within their party, to get some rubber on the road as far as like a decent maternity care policy to take into the election.
That's excellent information. I'm looking at the brief at the moment as well. All the information's on there, including your phone number and your email address if people need to contact you and get more information. And it's really, really simple, really. Just a matter of going online to find out who your federal MP is for your local area, writing them a quick email with why it's important to you, whether you're a grandparent, a husband, a partner, a friend, a sibling, you know, a support person, supporting somebody that's going to give birth or is currently in the maternity system or has been in the past as well, and you know that these things are really important for them, and then attaching the brief and following up a week later. Did you receive my email? What's happening? Have you been able to follow up on this? And if they reply saying that it's not to do with them, you can reassure them that it absolutely is to do with them, because the bulk of the funding for maternity health care services come from a federal place, and most federal MPs who know about health would know about this, and it's good for them to be reminded this is how it works. The more nudging they get, the more likely they are to address the situation.
Yeah, the other thing I would add, so follow up with a phone call, and like that's what I even had to do. I sent my brief to my local MP, I emailed again, then I had to call, and once I called, I was in there with a meeting. The other thing to do is to make sure that you put your postal address within the email or on the brief, because then they have to reply.
So that's another really important thing people don't sometimes understand, but that's what your federal MP is there to do. They're there to represent you, to represent their communities, and to make sure that they're following up on important requests from the communities. And these are, like you said, they have to reply if you're from the community. Any request is a real important request. So that's great. So we'll put all of this information in the show notes, including Maternity Consumer Network's website, and you'll be able to follow up on all of this. If you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to email or call Alecia, or email us at Pregnancy, Birth and Beyond as well. Again, information will be on the show notes. And good luck. Go for it. Don't worry. Don't think twice. Just do it. We've got a great opportunity. People have been advocating in this area for many decades, and there is actually a great opportunity at the moment, after a strong few years of advocacy, to actually make an important change in maternity healthcare services. And Alecia, oh my goodness, thank you so much for joining us tonight after your work and before you're going home to your beautiful many children. How many children do you have?
5.
5 children, my goodness. So you've been through it many times, and everyone out there, have a beautiful evening, day, whenever you're listening, and get onto it. And let us know how you go as well. We'd love to hear from you. You've been listening to Pregnancy, Birth and Beyond, an interview with Alecia Steines. Director of Maternity Consumer Network, host and creator of the podcast Birth, the Forgotten Feminist Issue, hypnobirthing teacher and mother of 5. I'm Alecia. The Pregnancy, Birth and Beyond show is part of a wider not-for-profit organisation. Our show has been on air, live on radio and through podcast for over a decade. You can find out more about our work at pbbmedia.org.